the Crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to episode 53 of Dads from the Crypt, the Tales from the Crypt podcast. My name is Jason. Jody's off tonight, but I'm joined by Mondo.
Hi.
Hello. Tonight, we've got some great guests for you. First, we got our friend and aunt from the Crypt that we know from the BGH Slack. Her name is Alyssa. Say hello.
I love being a fun aunt from the Crypt.
You can be a font.
Yeah. I wish I was a dude so I could be like Funkle Alyssa. There's not a feminine version though.
I'm pretty sure no person in the history of the world has ever wanted to be called a Funkle. Just saying.
I don't know. I think I'd be a good Funkle.
that word kind of that's I never want to hear that again.
I'm sorry.
That ranks up there with moist and Glenn Jacobs as words that I hate.
Wow, that only took like 10 seconds. That was a good one. All right. And then additionally, for the first time on our podcast, Alyssa was with us previously for our Lower Birth episode. But for the first time, we have Bo from the Dark Parade podcast. Hello, Bo.
Howdy. By the way, James Funkle, inventor of the oscilloscope.
What's an oscilloscope?
It's like it measures sound waves and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
That's neat.
That I made that up. That can't possibly be true.
I would have believed you, man. I was with you on the ride.
So the one thing I've learned over the course of my years is just say something with confidence and people will totally buy your crap.
Yeah,
Nice.
you're gonna be a great teacher, bud.
Thank you so much.
I used to work with a technician at Apple that when people would come in and say and their hard drive had failed, they'd ask why. And he'd always say spiders. And they'd say why, and he'd say it's easy. They crawl into your computer, they get between the platters, they get mushed up, and your hard drive breaks. It's always spiders. And he'd say it with confidence, and people would be like, yeah, okay, I accept this.
I have a friend of mine and I who have for about 10 years now have had an ongoing game of who can tell the best believable lie. Like, oh, hey, my uncle was a roadie for Peter Frampton. It's just there's enough removed that it sounds believable.
I love that because who would make up a story about Peter Frampton?
Yeah. And not even like, oh, he was the guitarist. No, he was the roadie for Peter Frampton.
Yeah.
I could buy that.
Yeah. So, but thanks for having me here after all the line I've done.
So, Bo, briefly, why don't you tell us about Dark Parade?
Yeah, so Dark Parade is the podcast I do. It is almost a variety show at this point that features episodes that center around horror movies about relationships or dedicated episodes about movies. Sometimes that's built around a theme, sometimes it's not. There's a found footage component to that as well. And here I mentioned this in the pre-show, but I've been going back to school recently, and so it's been more bonus episodes than anything, although it's still a weekly podcast. So if you go to the podcatcher of your choice and search for Dark Parade, you will find all kinds of weird dumb stuff that I do that entertains me to no end.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of weird dumb stuff, you had that great episode of Orca.
Yeah, thank you again for being on that. Even though you didn't enjoy Orca as much as I did, because I have a weird fetish for movies where animals eat people. It's just a thing I love. And
hey, I didn't yuck your yum.
Right? No, absolutely not. And yeah, so
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I again, thanks for coming on. We try to have a good time and try to also go a little bit deep on the films in a way that a lot of podcasts don't. Like, a lot of podcasts will do that cursory, like, whoa, this movie's really cool. And we try to do a little bit of that, but also a little bit more about, making of and some behind the scenes stuff. And
nice.
Kind of like you guys do with the Tales from the Crypt episodes of kind of getting the behind the scenes commentaries and things like that. And to me, that's the fun part of like obsessing over the horror genre in general, is getting into the minutia of it, I find to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for coming on.
Well, and you also were co-writer of Lost After Dark.
Yes,
The movie, because when he said your name, I was like, why do I know that name? And that was just in my opinion, it's a really fun throwback slasher with one of the coolest movie posters in recent memory.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really dug that movie poster as well. Not just because I had something to do with it, but it was really fun. And yeah, thanks. If anyone listening would like to buy several thousand copies, we would love to make a sequel. And there is a script for a sequel, but you know, it's tough to sort of navigate the world of indie horror in a way that you can turn anything into a franchise, even though I was kind of insistent on like, let's not do a franchise, let's just do 2 movies, and the second movie would be the Evil Dead 2 of Lost After Dark, where you just go bananas. There were cannibal babies hiding in walls and all kinds of crazy stuff. So one of these days, I still, fingers crossed, I feel like we might get there in one form or another.
It's a really fun watch, and it was a movie that I picked up because of how cool the poster was, and I end up watching it, actually really enjoying it. So I'm a fan.
Thanks, man.
I have one of those thousands of copies.
yeah. I think you and I have the and some of the crew. But yeah, and it's like a movie where you can watch several Degrassi members be murdered.
Yeah,
and so that's a good time.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, I was already in because while you were talking, I looked it up and I was like, oh, this looks fucking cool. Now I'm extra in because teenage me, big Degrassi fan.
See, that's how you should have marketed it.
Right, Degrassi dies.
Like the whole Paris Hilton does.
And I hate to say this, but I think like a movie like that, if it came out now, it would come out now to more fanfare. That the people are more to streaming. Like I think a streaming service would pick it up right away. Yeah. If it came out now, I think it's happened to come out in that weird time where people didn't know what they wanted in horror, and now that throwback is all the rage, which near and dear to my heart is great. But I think nowadays it'd have more of a place. So hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast out there, somebody like, and you have some power, watch that movie and help these guys and do something with it.
Yeah, give me a jingle.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Tonight, though, we are talking about Werewolf Concerto.
Oh.
Every time someone says werewolf, listen, I have to do that. This was released on September 9th, 1992. Since Jody's not here, we twisted Alyssa's arm to do a plot synopsis. So, Alyssa, please tell us about this episode.
All right, so Werewolf Concerto takes place in I don't think they said exactly where it took place. A cabin resort in the woods, run by Dennis Farina of Unsolved Mysteries fame.
He's a cop like in every movie ever, and
he was a cop for like 20 years. He was a Chicago cop. Yeah.
All I know is Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, he didn't start acting until he was like in his 40s.
Midnight Run is the Dennis Farina for me.
Yeah.
He's
so
good in that movie.
And Manhunter. Yeah. Okay. We'll dive in.
Off topic, I just made my wife watch Manhunter for the first time the other night, and she absolutely loved it. And I was so happy. It's those movies I'm like, you make your friend watch a movie, and you're kind of watching. I'm like, are you liking this movie? Are you liking it? Because I like it. And she was super into it. So I was a happy guy.
You were giving her the full, like, do you see?
Yeah. Are you not watching hard enough?
Yeah. I'm like, why is your phone in your hand?
All right, so he plays Antoine, which is very flamboyant, and I loved him for it. He is trying to maintain calm in his resort as there has been a werewolf attack, and everyone accepts this very easily. But he assures the guests that there's nothing to worry about. There's a secret werewolf hunter amongst them who is going to solve the case, and it's led us to believe that it is one Mr. Loci, who is James Bond. And through a series of unfortunate events, including killing a Nazi in the woods and trying very desperately to have sex with this beautiful woman, you end up finding out that he is the werewolf the whole time, and also the werewolf hunter, it seems. And in a turn of events, is stabbed through the heart with a silver candelabra by none other than the beautiful woman he was trying to go to Pound Town with, who ends up being a vampire.
Awesome.
I think we need the word Pound Town more on this podcast because
Yes.
it's funny, Alyssa, because I think it's one of those words that started before you were ever born.
Probably.
And I love that you're the first person I think that's ever said it on our podcast.
And I won't be the last. I'll make sure I say it anytime I come on the show. I'll try and find a way to weasel Pound Town into it.
So Alyssa, you are a self-proclaimed werewolf fanatic, aficionado.
I appreciate a werewolf.
Like you've said multiple times that you want to start a werewolf-related podcast.
I'm going to. It has a name.
Okay, can you tell us?
It's going to be called The Silver Screen.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure. I think it was Chris on Slack who actually suggested it on Bloody Good Horror Slack.
So,
and he was joking, but then I was like, trademark, this is mine now.
so can you tell us what it is about werewolves that speak to you so much?
It's just been something I've loved since I was a kid. You know, not to bring it down, but when you have like a tough childhood, you often want to escape. I got really into Harry Potter like 8 years old ish. And around that time, I think the 3rd book was out, and one of the main characters was Professor Lupin, who was a werewolf. Mm-hmm. He was my favorite. And I kind of think that's what started it. And then my older siblings got me into horror around the same age. And I just really got attached to the concept of being able to be something more than yourself.
Mm.
And also, most girls go through, you're either a horse girl or you're a wolf girl or you're somewhere in between. I was kind of both. However, I will say I only think that there's maybe 5 good werewolf movies that ever existed.
Ooh, that's a bold statement.
Only
they
5.
all kind of suck. Like as much as I love werewolves, and I'll watch all of them, that's the whole point of the future podcast that doesn't exist, is I want to find a really good werewolf movie that isn't American Werewolf in London or Teen Wolf.
Oh, yeah, you got Ginger Snaps
and Ginger Snaps. I cannot forget Ginger Snaps. You're right.
Yeah, see, I actually really agree with you. I like the werewolf as a cryptid, but as movies go, they're usually kind of boring because there's only like very little werewolf action. Like this ties into a lot to the episode that was last year's Werewolves Within was by far like the best werewolf movie.
I still haven't seen it, and I want to so bad.
But it's a great movie because they realize that the strength of the movie isn't just based around the werewolf sequences; it's based around the entire film itself, and the characters are really. I mean, that's a really character-driven film, and that's what's great. And same thing with American Werewolf in London, where it's very character-driven. But I will say to this day, like I get goosebumps thinking about it. The transformation scene to this day is like one of my favorite pieces of cinema of all time.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite werewolf transformation scene is from that, like, it was like one of the first Netflix original series, Hemlock Grove.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I do remember that.
It wasn't like a great show, but that werewolf transformation scene still stands out as like one of the best.
Well, I don't remember it, sadly.
Skin as like he turns into a whole wolf and like eats the skin. It's so cool.
Oh God, I remember it, and I remember that show had so much promise, and they tried to add all these weird threads in about like secret government agencies and stuff. I'm like, okay, and then it kind of just started fizzling out towards the end.
That's where I discovered Bill Skarsgård.
Nice. All right, let's dive into this episode. Bo, why don't you start us off? What did you think of this episode?
I rarely say this about any form of popular entertainment these days, but I wish it had been longer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I think one of the problems I have with this, and I find it really entertaining. First of all, the cast is stacked. It's just one of those episodes that's just chock full of great character actors, and every time you turn around, like it was either Dennis Farina or Charles Fleischer or Reginald VelJohnson, and you're like, oh, he's in this, oh, he's in this, oh, Beverly D'Angelo is in this too. So it's got a crazy good cast. And I think my problem with it is that you don't really get to spend much time with any of those other cast members. They're just there as sort of backdrops, and the entire episode is so compact that by the time you get to the end of it, which if you've ever read any kind of EC comic stuff, I don't know that the end is a terrible surprise, but it's still fun. But I felt like, well, what about all these other like fun side characters? You know, you mentioned Werewolves Within, that the strength of that being all these weird and interesting side characters. And just in this episode that runs 24 minutes, you just can't do much with them. And it's hard to also flesh out a good mystery in 24 minutes, I think. And so rather than giving the audience some red herrings, and I mean, there's one kind of major red herring, but aside from letting the audience kind of follow the journey of, you know, assumedly the detective played by Timothy Dalton, or the werewolf hunter, of trying to suss out who is who, and having some moments where maybe it's Charles Fleischer, maybe it's Reginald VelJohnson, you know, that kind of thing. You're just kind of tugged along through the narrative until you get to the end of it, and then, okay, here's our surprise ending. So you know, that's really my complaints, but everybody is clearly having a great time. You know, like Alyssa mentioned with Dennis Farina, of doing this surprisingly inoffensive gay affectation for the time that this was made. This could have really gone bad, and I don't think it ever does. It is a bit flamboyant, but it's never played for laughs, which again, kind of shocking for something from the early to mid 90s. But yeah, that, you know, and Charles Fleischer is always a treat. Like his scene in Zodiac, I think, is still one of the creepiest things that has ever been in films. It's so good. So seeing him, you know, it's like, oh, hey, look, Roger Rabbit is on the hunt for a werewolf. That's a good time. And you know, and Sergeant Al Powell is also there, and you know, all these kind of fun you know, 80s and 90s actors popping up. And I have a long-standing crush on Beverly D'Angelo, going back to what, like The Sentinel.
Wow.
Yeah,
she's gorgeous.
yeah, I
So
mean,
beautiful.
and real like that kind of Kathleen Turner-esque smoky voice as well. And yeah, so you know, having her show up in anything is always a treat, but it was it was really nice to kind of see her also seeming to have a real good time, especially at the end of this thing. So I think this is a fun episode. I don't know that the mystery works all that well. You know, the werewolf stuff is kind of fine. I don't know that it's very surprising or anything, but it's fun. And like, I love Tales from the Crypt stuff, and I love, you know, that sort of, you know, Bill Gaines kind of patented twist at the end, of especially putting a little English on Beverly D'Angelo's character as a whole. And so I had a great time with it. You know, like you guys, you just talked about the puppet episode last week, and I feel like it almost falls into that kind of category of like a close but no cigar, of like, this could be a great episode, and it's not quite a great episode, but it's a real fun episode.
All right, Alyssa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was necessarily a wonderful episode of Tales from the Crypt, but I was entertained and engaged the whole time. Dennis Farina was down bad for Timothy Dalton. Like every scene, like he was like, "Hello, Mr. Locke." And I was like,
Real fast, Alyssa, help an old man out here. Why are mustaches back in style? What the fuck happened in the past couple years?
I don't know. Like, I guess it just depends on the face. Any facial hair can work for any man, or no facial hair.
I just see way too many mustaches hanging around. I'm just like, I just don't know. Like,
some
people can rock it, most can't.
I'm currently crushing on a woman, so no mustaches there. So, like,
an actress or an
actual person.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's fine.
Hey, no,
but actors aren't actual people.
Yeah, me not fixate on a celebrity for once in my life.
You're over Eddie.
No, never.
No,
never.
Alyssa, at least a good 10% of my day is reading your tweets and just rooting for you. So
yeah.
Thank you. But I don't know. I knew that what's Bart words D'Angelo. I knew I was like, what is her name? I knew that she was not entirely human, I guess. Like I had, going into the episode, I had a few different suspects. It was her, it was Timothy Dalton, and then I really wanted it to be Dennis Farina. I just think it would have been neat.
He has a bit of animal magnetism to him.
Yeah, it's the eyebrows.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been awesome. And so I wasn't surprised by her like showing up as a vampire in the end. I didn't necessarily expect it to be a vampire, maybe until like right before he opens the piano. Because I had wondered about it earlier, like, why isn't the piano playing any music? And I was like, there's something wrong with that piano. And then finally, towards the end, he's going to open it. And I was like, it's going to be a coffin. It's going to be a coffin. Yeah, it's a coffin. And I was right. I think it was a waste of Reginald VelJohnson.
Well, he wasn't as popular then as he is as well known as he is now. Because back then, I think when this came out, it might have been in the infancy or maybe before Family Matters aired.
It was important to me now.
Okay. I got you.
Well, I watched it with our friend Andromeda and her boyfriend, and as the cast like was popping up during the credits, I kept going, "Oh, they're in this! Oh, they're in this!" And I was like, Reginald VelJohnson. And when he showed up, her boyfriend was like, "Is that the uncle from Fresh Prince?" And I was like, "No, that is the dad from Family Matters. Get it right."
Hold on a second. Okay.
It's in his IMDb that he and whatever Avery get mixed up often.
What? They look nothing alike.
I know.
They're both heavy set older men. Like, I don't know. They were both awesome.
They're both great. And Uncle Phil was the voice of the Shredder, so
I always forget that. And then
that makes me
like
so
once
happy.
a year, it is like brought back to my memory.
And former pro wrestler Kevin Nash, aka Diesel, was the actor behind Super Shredder.
No. You're so full of wrestling facts. It's my favorite.
It's ridiculous, but yeah, I know.
And then there's me. I know nothing about like when the whole thing with what's his nuts was going on. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I bet Mondo's happy.
I was very happy because anytime you take a 73, a 75, 77-year-old man who has sexual misconduct issues and kick him out of the company, that's a good thing for everybody.
Hell yeah. And then didn't like Brock Lesnar, like wasn't he like, nah, not my Vince McMahon?
No,
And then
see. Oh man, we
we have to go on that rabbit hole.
Well, hold on a second. I'm gonna answer this question in 20 seconds.
Okay.
No, Brock Lesnar is an amazing businessman, and he's like, well, I'm gonna walk out too and see if they'll pay me a few more bucks to come on back. He's Brock Lesnar's a businessman. He knows what he's doing.
Funny.
Put it that
It's
way.
all his business knowledge is stored in the neck. But
and the extra pectorals.
it's the only thing I know about Brock Lesnar is that his neck is large and terrifying. But I don't know. I think that for a TV episode made in the mid 90s, the werewolf effects were kind of like, they were bad, but in a very exciting and fun way, because it looked like he was wearing a jacket with fringe, and I thought that was very beautiful. But yeah, it was wacky.
Yeah. All right, Mondo.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I love a good whodunit, and I'm with Bo that as an almost 40-year-old man, it's rare that I'll say, man, I wish that was 15 minutes longer, but I really wish this was a little bit longer to flesh out some of the. I thought they had some really good ideas, and they were really kind of going with these red herrings, but it was at such a breakneck pace that you never got a chance to let any of that kind of sit in and marinate. Kind of how they pushed that maybe Walter Gotell, who's also a villain in a lot of James Bond films, how he ended up being the Nazi that the authorities were looking for. They found a Nazi was at this resort. And I thought at first he was going to be the werewolf, and then he gets killed, obviously. So I think they had some really good ideas for red herrings, but they had to kind of just run through it at a really, really fast pace. I think if they could flesh out a little bit, and also with such great actors and actresses on screen, it's just nice when they can just chew scenery up and interact, and you want to see them more and more and more. Like it's almost like imagine doing the movie Heat, but doing it in a 25-minute Law and Order episode or something like that, and giving Pacino and De Niro 2 minutes on screen together. So I do agree with that, but I really did. I kind of love this episode. Because of the cast, Timothy Dalton, obviously, Farina, Beverly D'Angelo, much like Bo said, like any kid that watched the vacation movies in their formative years, they're very young, probably had a crush on Bo D'Angelo or Beverly D'Angelo. And
Bo D'Angelo.
I know I'm too many B's and I'm ranting, but what I do
That's
love,
my aunt, yes.
one of my favorite things is they bring up Beverly D'Angelo halfway through the movie, like, or the episode, like, where has she been? Like, oh, she's a drunk. She only shows up at night. And I was like, that's foreshadowing. But I love how they just write her off as being a drunk because she only shows up in the evening. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I'm gonna give. I really did enjoy this. A funny thing is that the guy that actually did the music for this, the composer, he goes by the name of Rick Marotta. This is his first ever composing credit, and then went on to do mainly TV shows. Everybody Loves Raymond. He did Yes Dear, Center of the Universe. But one of my favorites is if you look him up on IMDb, he has a handful of acting roles he did, and he was in the movie Showgirls.
Oh.
And he was credited as long-haired drunk.
That's what they call it in college.
So I do love it. That was his one of his acting role names. But yeah, a really fun episode. I think it's a fun episode, Tales from the Crypt, and I love the whodunit aspect of it. I love the red herrings, but I wish it could have been fleshed out just a little bit more.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna hop in. I love this episode. It's almost like too much of a good thing. It's like, you know, getting a dessert that's just too sweet to just kind of like you're just kind of like feeling kind of sick afterwards. It's almost, yeah, there's too much of a good cast. Like we didn't mention this, but Wolfgang Puck is in here for one scene for no goddamn reason.
But no, he's in there for a very specific reason. The name Wolfgang. That's 100% the reason why he's in there, because of the name Wolfgang, which I absolutely loved.
And
okay, I didn't make that connection until just now. To what?
And playing himself. I feel like that's important. He wasn't a character.
No, he's totally playing himself.
Which is kind of crazy. With this small, like, little bed and breakfast somehow has Wolfgang Puck as their chef.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the problem with the episodes, that they put in so much of that kind of stuff without making the plot tighter. Because yeah, Tales from the Crypt every episode has to be about 23, give or take a few minutes long. So if you put too much in, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You put too many great characters. So like, yeah, we all love Reginald VelJohnson and the woman who plays his wife, Lela, Rochon, but they didn't really serve any purpose to the plot, and they just kind of confuse things. So I like in my head to, like, because I watched this twice.
Real fast, can I ask you, were you confused by them because they are like nowadays both kind of famous people versus back then when they weren't, though? I don't think they were put in to confuse you. They were
no. I don't think they're confused. Well, I mean, again, he was in Die Hard. He had a major role in Die Hard, so
yeah, that's true.
He was at least known. I just don't think that those characters served anything, even as a red herring. So that whole like lunch scene, if I was rewriting this, I would get rid of that. Have another scene with Beverly D'Angelo to kind of strengthen that, whatever that character, and then maybe put another scene where he overhears Fleischer talking about finding a Nazi or something like that.
I really love the fact they built Lokai and Janice's Beverly D'Angelo and Timmy Dalton's characters. Their whole like love interest was based around taking a bath.
I know, and Beverly D'Angelo's only in 2 scenes in this episode. That like quasi seduction scene, and then the very end. So I think she needed a little bit more as a plot wise in here to really flesh that whole thing out. And then the whole him going after the guy who turns out to be a Nazi, it's all just so rushed that like you're not really processing it at the time.
Yeah, the Nazi subplot was kind of weird because it really didn't add anything. Like they could have just completely cut that out of there.
Well, no, that's the red herring. So I think they need to flesh out the red herring stronger.
Yeah, I know. I get it's a red herring. What I mean is like, I like if you're gonna straight up call someone a Nazi sympathizer and pull that plot point in, like you have to do something with it, or just he could still be a red herring, but not have the whole Nazi sympathizer.
Yeah, there was some, they need to clear that up one way or another. But yeah, all the performances are great, all the actors are great. So this was directed by Steve Perry. He has done mostly producer and second unit directors. He was a second unit director on the original Rocky and worked on Roadhouse and Die Hard 2 and True Romance. Timothy Dalton as Lokai. He was actually in an Agatha Christie movie, or at least like a movie based on her life, or like some like fictional depiction. That's kind of cool. I didn't realize this. Timothy Dalton was also in Flash Gordon.
Flash.
I knew someone would do that. And then he was obviously James Bond in The Living Daylights, License to Kill. He was in The Rocketeer. He was awesome in Hot Fuzz. He was in Chuck, and now he's been in Doom Patrol. Dennis Farina, again, he was a cop for a long time. Then I think his 40s. His first big role was in Manhunter as what's his name, Jack.
Was he Crawford in that?
Crawford, yeah, he was Crawford. Like he was the original Crawford. He was a Midnight Run, Get Shorty, Snatch, and then was in Law and Order for a long time. Now we have Walter Gotell playing Mr. Hertz, who the guy ends up being a Nazi. He was a long-time Bond villain. He was in a ton of movies. He was also in Puppet Master 3. That was one of his last movies before he passed away.
Oh, rest in peace.
Charles Fleischer, who we all know and love. One of his first roles was in Welcome Back, Kotter. He had a bit part in Nightmare on Elm Street. He was the dream doctor or the sleep doctor when Nancy's getting her test done. Obviously, he was the voice of Roger Rabbit. He was in Back to the Future 2. He was in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. He was in Zodiac, as we mentioned. Great character actor. He needs more work. Reginald VelJohnson. He was in Ghostbusters. I forgot about this, as one of the prison guard who lets them out.
Speaking of Ghostbusters, my wife was watching The Crow last night. I totally forgot that Ernie Hudson was like had a major role in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. One of the main leads. Yeah.
I totally forgot about it.
I that's the second time that I've thought about Brandon Lee today, and that's a really weird coincidence.
Well, speaking also, you're also a Gil Grissom fan.
Yeah.
Have you seen Manhunter?
I haven't, and I know he plays Will Graham, but I just
it's young Will Peterson, and you can definitely tell when they decided they're going to do CSI, they watched that performance and they're like, yeah, we need he's
right here.
And if you haven't seen it, like I'm going to be that guy that says I like it better than Silence of the Lambs. I just love that movie so much. Well, I'm a big fan of Michael Mann's cinematography. Like I just love the cinematography in that film. So that does it for me.
They're two very different films.
Very different films.
Silence of the Lambs is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
so
I love Silence.
My bar will be high, but I'll watch it.
You'll love Manhunter.
I loved Hannibal, so I really loved Hannibal.
What is
do you like Iron Butterfly?
I know what that is.
In The God of the Vida.
Oh.
Yeah.
That reference was almost lost on me.
Completely off topic, but tied that Nightmare on Elm Street, it was covered by Slayer for Freddy's Dead.
Oh.
I do know who Slayer is.
Just to run down the talent.
Sorry, Bo, what'd you have?
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna one more Manhunter shout out. It's got a great Tom Noonan performance as well, who is a great villain in every movie he plays a villain in. Like he was the creepy husband in House of the Devil not so long ago, and has just been turning in great eerie performances for 30 years at this point. God bless that man's good work. Oh,
his depiction in that film is just unreal. And there's that whole sequence when he meets the blind woman is just terrifying. It's strangely sympathetic. Like there are moments where you genuinely feel for him as a character. Right. And you have to remind yourself like, oh, right, he's a serial killing madman. All right. I've got it. Also early Joan Allen. Anyway, terrific movie. Manhunter's amazing.
Reginald VelJohnson was also in Crocodile Dundee, which I forgot about. He was also in Turner and Hooch. So obviously he was in Family Matters.
Didn't they recently did this? Who's the star of Crocodile Dundee? Ben Hogan?
Paul Hogan.
Paul Hogan, sorry. And they recently did like a movie where like he's like playing himself, but people think he's Crocodile Dundee, almost like My Name is Bruce, where people of the small town thought Bruce Campbell was Ash. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks interesting.
Kind of JCVD kind of did
that yeah, very much in that same vein.
Okay.
And this is funny, at least on IMDb, they credit his character as Mercedes' husband. Okay, I guess they never mentioned his name, but they mentioned his wife's name. So there you go, a little switch up there. So Mercedes is played by Lela Rochon. She had bit parts in Cosby Show, Fresh Prince, but she was also in Any Given Sunday, which was one of my favorite movies from the 90s. Beverly D'Angelo, She started off in Hair. She was also Patsy Cline in The Coal Miner's Daughter.
Oh.
And then she was the wife in a lot of National Lampoon movies, National Lampoon's Vacation, European Vacation, Christmas Vacation, I think the Vegas one.
Yeah.
She was also in American History X, which is an excellent movie.
Another funny story. My wife was friends with the guy that played Uncle Eddie's son in that. Back in high school.
And then, as we said, Wolfgang Puck plays Wolfgang Puck. And I like to see like where actors play themselves in lots of different movies. So he was in Who's the Boss, Blossom, Ellen, Frasier, and of course The Simpsons.
I really like Wolfgang Puck. I think he's funny.
Yeah, my wife likes to watch a lot of Top Chef, and he comes on there occasionally. He's always a good guy.
I really liked the face that he made when he was like offering all these like beautiful dishes, and like Timothy Dalton was like, "Nah, I want a burger," and he's like, you know, like you could kind of hear the womp 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 like in his face.
Well, and then to be like extra douchey, he orders an iced tea with extra ice.
Yeah. Okay. Like,
What's wrong? I don't get what's wrong with
Michelin
that.
star chef Wolfgang Puck. Like,
He's ordering an iced tea from Wolfgang Puck.
Yeah, well, okay, though. I respect Wolfgang Puck's cooking, but I don't think he's doing anything special with his iced tea. I bet it's Lipton fucking iced tea bags and
just the way he said it. It's just like there's no waiter coming around pouring iced teas. It was just it's just a weird saying.
That was my first clue that was when I kind of thought that Lokai might be the werewolf. Because like I don't remember the specific dishes that Wolfgang Puck was offering, but when he was just like, I want a cheeseburger, I was like, oh, okay, this man needs the meat. Like,
well, because the second time I watched that, I paid more attention to that bit. It was some sort of salmon dish. I'm like, well, wolves like salmon.
Yeah, but not as much as they like a big old beefy burger.
All right, that's a stretch, dude. I think wolves will eat any meat they can find. Like wolves like salmon.
Yeah.
It's like that palate.
What's that like dishes for the wild or whatever? I feed my dog has like
buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like pictures like wolves with like big fish in their mouths running around.
It's like the end of The Howling where the creepy sexy lady orders the raw hamburger.
Oh yes.
I suddenly have this like image of this like pastoral fantasy of werewolves doing like at the salmon run, like just like grabbing.
I imagine. Okay. I want a bunch of humans just showing up and being all awkward to one another, like sup, like all like suspicious about one another, but no one's gonna just outright say like, "Are we here for the same reason?"
Yeah, they're just they're noodling for salmon.
So that actually reminds me of what I was gonna say, like for kind of my rewrite of this. I was hoping that all the other characters would show up at the end and either be werewolves or vampires. It's like one of those like flip it around. I'm to tie all the characters back together.
I'm gonna be staunchly against that because they've done that before, like with the episode with the underground, like the goblins, whatever. Yeah. No, I like the fact that it was I love the fact that it was one werewolf and one vampire. I love the vampire is also a werewolf hunter because as we've learned from what we do in the shadows, that werewolves and vampires do not get along.
and throws mad shade at him.
Yeah.
The werewolves and what we do in the shadows are like my favorite pictures of werewolves of all time when they're all
Beast Darky is perfect.
Yeah, I think somewhere around here I've got a werewolves not swearwolves shirt.
That's my favorite line in that entire movie because it's said with such conviction.
What are we? Werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah, it's so good.
And also, it's like, man, it's an age-old adversarial, mythos. It's always vampires versus werewolves, and then we get to Underworld where it's what if vampires and werewolves.
Well, after like 5 movies, it takes a while to get to.
They get down in that first movie.
All I remember about those movies is Kate Beckinsale and Skin Tight.
She's so hot. That's
I don't know anything else.
And with that, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And
right. Everyone pause the recording.
All right, I'm going to do the comic comparison since Jody's not here. This is from Vault of Horror number 16. The plot is somewhat the same. There's no loci characters. So basically you have, it takes place in Hungary. So you have a some sort of hotel that like the last 3 months of the full moon, there's been a horrific murder and they're about to lose all their business. And there's this Antoine is then the manager. He's very nervous about that. And he sees that this famous concert pianist is coming to town. So he calls her real quick. And
wait. A concert what?
Pianist.
Okay, it's bad. Never mind.
And offers her like the best suite in the hotel, yada yada. She immediately accepts, so he can draw business to his hotel. So before she arrives, her piano arrives. They make a big deal out of that. That they never see her check in to the hotel, but she shows up. Like, oh, why didn't anyone tell me she was here? Yada yada yada. And basically, long and short of it is, it turns out that Antoine is the werewolf. And he's looking for food. He bursts into her room. He can't find her. Then he like bumps in the piano or whatever, and it doesn't play. So he opens it up and sees that it's empty. And then she jumps out from behind him, and that's like the freeze frame panel at the end. So it's a little bit more streamlined. Really good art, really good art. And yeah, they kind of invented the loci character as the werewolf hunter in this one.
I liked his name a lot. I did a little bit of research, and then apparently all I could find was like a company that makes bracelets. However, the name Loci is very similar to Loki, who we know from Norse mythology, who has a wolf son, and then also one of the first. I can go more into werewolf history facts later, but one of the oldest stories of werewolves is from Greek mythology of a king named Lycaon.
Is that where we get lycanthropy from?
Sure is.
Nice.
Alrighty, let's move on to our episode rating. Bo, what do you rate this episode 0 to 5? You can do half points if you want.
Yeah, I would probably land it. I think it's a solid 3 just for cast and premise and the end being very fun. So I'm tempted to go 3.5, but I think I'm going to stick with 3.
Okay, Alyssa.
I will give this 3 out of 5 Reginald VelJohnsons.
Mondo.
All right. I'm going to go higher than all of you guys. I really actually love this episode. Like my complaints with it were I look at anything when I wanted more out of it because I enjoyed it so much that it has to be pretty good. I'm going 4.5. I actually really love this episode. I love the actors involved. Maybe I just watched it on the right day and time because it had been a rough week and it's kind of what I wanted. Like it doesn't hit all these little pieces for me. But I'm gonna go 4.5. I'm gonna go 4.5. I think this is a really well done episode, and that's not all your complaints are 100% valid, and you guys are almost talking me down as you guys talk about this episode, but I got to go with my gut, and my gut says 4.5.
Live your truth, Mondo.
I'm doing my best.
All right, I'm gonna go with a 3.5. And I'm giving it a half point from a 3, just because you get to see a Nazi shot in the head. That just always does it for me.
I respect this.
Yeah,
I respect this. I'm going to cut this though. I'm going to edit this to where all Jason says is because you see a Nazi.
Yeah.
No.
Oh boy.
It just be clips of various things he's said to make it look like he's very pro, like right-wing fascist,
right?
Like the my voice is my passport, verify me.
There's so many jokes I'll make right now, but I just know Mondo could edit them even worse.
But I'm too lazy, so I wouldn't. So it's fine.
I just simply think that more Nazis should get shot in the head.
Yes, yeah. Pretty much all of them, I think.
Yeah, all of them. Every single one. Take them out.
Yeah.
All right. With that, let's move on to song of the day.
Could you imagine, like, when you have all the men on Twitter that are like, not all men, if someone was like, not all Nazis, like fuck off.
I will kick you in the shins, buddy. Don't like.
If you've been kicked in the shins, that sucks. My song of the day. So I'm actually wearing a shirt by a band called Wolves in the Throne Room. You see how legible that logo is? Easy to read, right?
Yeah, of course.
Nailed it. But I'm actually gonna go with a band here who kind of the main creative force behind it just passed away in the past couple of weeks.
Oh no.
It happens. People die. But his name was Ola Berland. He did he was the creative force behind the bands Forgotten Woods and later on the band Joyless, who eventually turned like a dark rock, almost kind of Cure style band with the last record they did. With some really weird female vocals, a lot of people can't get into, but I think it's a really great record. But I'm gonna go with the first record by his original band, Forgotten Woods, and the song's called "As the Wolves Gather." And it was kind of cool because it came out during the second wave of black metal, but it was the precursor to modern, what you call, and I hate labels, but they call them DSBM, depressive suicidal black metal, because it had these really weird, like almost kind of like goth rock guitars with a driving bass line, which was so much different from everything that was coming out of Europe at that time in the early 90s when it came to black metal. So they're really ahead of the time and influenced just a ton of bands. Neil Jameson from Krieg, he did a write about how influential Forgotten Woods was on him. And it's just a phenomenal black metal record with a lot of dark rock influence. And the song I'll pick up there is not the title track, but it's a song called In My Darkest Visions, which I think is just like a perfect song. And that's all I can really say about that. So if I ever update the Spotify playlist, which maybe I'll make that a priority this week, because I think I'm 2 seasons behind now at this point, I'll throw it on there. But it's As the Wolves Gather by the band Forgotten Woods. And the song is In My Darkest Visions, and rest in peace to Olav Berland, who passed away at the age of 45 from just, apparently he was ill for a long time, and that was just what happens. People get old.
I do have a playlist of werewolf songs and wolf songs, so I just went and added that to it.
You're gonna hate it, Alyssa. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna, but it's fine. It fits the. I mean, there's all kinds of music on that playlist. If it is about werewolves or wolves, it goes on there.
Well, woven imagery was like huge in underground metal, because all these bands, like as a Canadian band, actually got kind of popular thanks to Letterkenny, called Woven Ancestry. There's like Wolves on the Throne Room from the US. So I just saw it not Cycle Fest at Fire in the Mountains a while back, and they call them Cascadian black metal because they're all about nature and about wildlife and stuff like that. And I think it's just beautiful music. But but wolves are always like a heavy and lycanthropy heavy theme in metal, so it's kind of cool.
I mean, like the first song that I put on there was "Bark at the Moon" by Ozzy Osbourne, and then it was like when I started making this playlist in college, and I have been out of college for a while, and so every time I find a new song, I add to it. It's years old, but that when I first started that playlist, "Bark at the Moon" was my most played song on iTunes, because I was just like, I was in it. I needed to listen to werewolf music constantly.
I'm just gonna make you a metal werewolf playlist, and I just need you to tell me how many songs you get through before you turn it off.
I'll listen to it. Like Mondo says this because I am a musical theater backgrounded, listens to mostly like indie emo at this point in my life. I require music I can sing to, and so with metal, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying.
It's funny because I took a recent road trip with my boss Nikita. I guess I shouldn't say his name on here, but whatever, it's fine. He's like, you're driving, put anything you want. I said, what do you listen to? He goes, I listen to everything. So I'm like, all right, let me throw in some Bolt Thrower. Bolt Thrower is just like the AC/DC of death metal. Like, it's a standard paint by numbers fun death metal. He 10 seconds in, he goes, yeah, I don't listen to this. I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. We'll just listen to the fucking Golf Network or whatever you listen to.
No, I don't tell people I listen to everything anymore, because like I don't listen to everything, but I listen to a lot of things. I'm fairly eclectic.
I hate to be that guy. I don't listen to most things, and it's probably bad, but I try. I will give everything a shot. And usually my goal as a person getting older in life is that, and I'll also give everything a shot, and I will never ever shit on it. I will only tell people the things I like about it.
Have you ever listened to Lizzo, Mondo?
I've listened to Lizzo. I think Lizzo is what I love about Lizzo is that she doesn't give a fuck. And I love her. I love her personality. I love her just like be you and be proud of who you are. When I listen to her music, I think, wow, that sounds upbeat and positive, and I never want to hear it again.
There's not enough yelling.
But I have no whatever, dude. Like if people love it, fucking A, man. Like do it.
Way worse things to get
Puts a smile on his face.
Right. There's worse things to get into, like fucking Led Zeppelin.
How
I
dare
think
you?
Jason wore that shirt on purpose.
I entirely did not, but I'm happy I did.
No, I told him we were talking before the podcast. I told him they need to take that shirt off before the podcast. He didn't listen to me. I wasn't being, I was being a little serious.
I think Mondo just wanted you to record shirtless, Jason.
And
Well, then we'd have an actual werewolf on the show. All right, let's go to our
hold on.
trivia.
You can't just jump past that.
Yeah, again.
Jason, how hairy are you?
I don't know how to quantify that.
Jason, take the shirt off.
That's for our Only Dads account only.
If
have
you have your shirt off and go to a public swimming pool, say, does anyone ask you to remove your vest?
only my asshole friends.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
All right, trivia of the day.
I just want to find Jason at a public pool and just like do like the old Jackass skits and have the hair trim in my pocket and just shave a strip across his chest.
If you want to try.
How loudly would you scream if waxed? That's
or I'd also be down for if we do Patreon account eventually, is where I'll shave your chest and we'll record it and we'll have the song in Ghost. When
whatever
the Potter, yes, that song. We'll play that song during it.
Then we can sell off the hairs on our Patreon.
For every $1,000,
Yes.
another inch gets shaved.
You have a lock of my chest hair.
You start selling your body hair, you're asking for black magic, sir.
Trust me, after last week, I felt like I was already cursed by black magic.
Roll the dice on it, but that's gonna
All right.
end up being burned in a black candle somewhere.
or I can shave your chest during what's that song from Exit to Eden, like the famous like sex song from the 90s. Oh god, the band was Enigma.
Oh wow.
Oh.
I know what you're talking about. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's get through this. I can get the trivia.
Return to Innocence, I think, is what we're thinking of here.
Can you sing it for us, Bo?
No. Most certainly not. Although I do have a friar, an actual monk nearby that I think will probably do a better job.
Okay. All right, trivia of the day. So as we talked about, the Nazi in this episode is played by Walter Gotell, who is famous for playing Bond villains. And he actually holds the record with a total of 7 appearances in Bond movies. He is the only one to star alongside 3 different Bond actors, namely Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and Timothy Dalton. So he was very prolific in that franchise.
If he played like 7 different Bond villains, I'm just imagining that they are all related.
Or they're all
I think
named
he played
after
the
the
same
7
guy
dwarfs.
who just kind of shows up in different
Oh,
different
okay.
No,
movies.
he played the same doctor, I think, in 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, and I think he played the henchman in From Russia with Love.
I'll be real. I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 James Bond movies in my entire life.
You're totally fine.
They've just never interested me. I worked at a movie theater when Skyfall came out, and my only memory of that movie is I was turned around. It was a dine-in theater, so I was facing away from the screen, putting food on someone's tray as like it was quiet in the movie, and then there was a very loud gunshot, and I almost spilled all the food on the person because I was like, what the fuck?
Like when we were growing up, those movies were always on TBS or
Yes,
TNT or
yes.
AMC, but like nowadays they're not. So I've probably seen all of them, but I couldn't tell you a whole lot about most of them.
Yeah,
Somebody's
agreed.
name was like Octopussy, and I'm never gonna forget that.
Yeah,
It's great how dirty like songs and movies were back then, and people act like nowadays we're degenerates. Like,
yeah,
Before
a lot of them
WAP,
don't
they
age
were
very
hot.
well on many levels.
Oh, yeah, no, just racism and sexual assault as far as the eye can see.
Mhm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of those movies, they're problematic to say the least.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Nah, they're it's whatever. Like if you want to watch them, cool, but you're not missing a whole lot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Alyssa, do you have any werewolf trivia you want to share?
I do. So the first written recording of any kind of man to wolf transformation is actually from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is back in 2100 BC. But werewolves as we know them today originate in ancient Greece. There are multiple stories about it, but the big one is a king named Lycaon who invited the gods to dinner, and as like a way to try and trick the gods, cooked one of his sons and was like, "Hey Zeus, how you like that flank steak, bro?" And Zeus knew, obviously, because he's God. And as punishment, he and his 50 sons are cursed to remain in the form of wolves. And so this is one of the first werewolf stories. There's also an instance in, I can't remember if it's an Ovid poem, like epic or something, but there's one story, like ancient Italian, ancient Roman story, where a dude like turned, like they had a party and they were super drunk, and this guy like took off all his clothes, put him in the middle of the road, pissed in a circle around him, turned into a wolf and ran away. And that was just like in the middle of this epic poem.
I mean, that sounds pretty epic. So it fits right in the middle of that.
It was Pliny the Elder. That's who it was.
Pliny the Elder, also a famous beer by Russian River Brewing Company. One of the first ever double IPAs made in America, and still one of the best.
And Ovid does, yeah, I was right though. Ovid does have a description. It's a very cool description of Lycaon turning into a wolf. It says he tried to speak, but his voice broke into an echoing howl. His ravening soul infected his jaws. His murderous longings were turned on the cattle. He still was possessed by bloodlust. His garments were changed to a shaggy coat and his arms into legs. He was now transformed into a wolf. It's like super cool. But
that's super intense.
Yeah. So yeah, werewolves, ancient Greece. That's where we get them from.
The other question I have for you with trivia: has Bill Hader ever played a werewolf?
No. But man, would I like that. There have also been I was once on a friend's podcast entirely about and did a whole episode about werewolves. There was a convicted murderer named Peter Stub or Stumpf in Germany, who was a convicted child murderer who claimed to be a werewolf. He was tortured on a wheel. Like they tied this dude, they nailed him to a big iron wheel and tortured and executed him. There have been many, also Hitler thought he was a werewolf. There's a lot of werewolf interest in the Nazi regime because just, why the fuck not? We're already going to be the worst people to ever exist. We might as well just be werewolves too.
There's that documentary, Werewolf, Women of the SS. By Rob Zombie.
Was there?
Robert Zombert.
It's one of the fake trailers from Planet Terror.
What's funny, the guy you just mentioned they also called him the Vampire of Dusseldorf.
Yes.
And the only reason I know that is because a metal band from Chicago named Macabre on their album, I think it was Murder Metal, might have been Murder Metal, did a song called Vampire of Dusseldorf.
Don't they do a lot of like true crime? Don't they have one about like Elizabeth Bathory?
Well, so many bands did Bathory because of the vampire mythos, but they did like a whole record called Dahmer, which is all about Dahmer's life from start to death. And
sad life.
Well, and actually one of the guys in the band is considered one of the foremost experts on Dahmer because he actually did all the research, and he's a serial killer fan and wrote to Dahmer and had all that weird stuff going on. But yeah, they're fucking love that band. They're so good.
My last bit of werewolf fact: there was a very famous werewolf attack spree in Gévaudan, France, where children and girls and sheep were being killed by this creature. They all thought it was a werewolf, and I'm like, it ended up being like a hyena or a lion that was like part of someone's menagerie that like had escaped.
Isn't that Brotherhood of the Wolf, that French film?
And it was the French film that I saw when I was entirely too young, Brotherhood of the Wolf, was about the Feast of Gévaudan.
I remember that movie being really rad.
That was a great movie.
I've honestly never seen it. It's been one of those movies been on my list for forever to watch.
If I remember correctly, it is very horny.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's French.
Yeah, though I've seen some French films like Martyrs. Martyrs was not horny, nor was Inside.
It depends on how you look at it.
For
Perspective.
Dahmer, it probably was.
It does.
He didn't get to watch any movies like that. He got murdered in prison.
Like Christopher Scarver.
We know that.
What,
I do.
Okay.
I do because Macabre has a song and it's called Christopher Scarver Killed Jeffrey Dahmer. So
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, I mean, I can't say anything because I have a distinct memory of being in college and a friend going, "Hey, Alyssa, how many victims did Jeffrey Dahmer have?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 17." And she's like, "Yeah, you shouldn't know that."
Was it the test? Was she testing you?
Yes. And I failed, I guess. I failed by being right.
Wow.
That's an important life lesson. I think that
If someone-
sometimes being correct is also being wrong.
When it comes to knowing way too much about true crime.
Sure. Yeah. But I think anyone, in our genre has those conversations where you're like, no, Ted Bundy's worst crimes were after he broke out of prison. And you're like, no, that is not information you need to carry around with you.
All right. That moves us on to thank you for that trivia, by the way, Alyssa. And that moves us on to our dad advice. And Mondo, you had a topic you wanted to
I
broach.
do have something. So again, I'm gonna bring the mood down a little bit. But last night in Brazil, a gentleman by the name of Leandro Lo, who is known, as I talk about a lot, I'm a huge fan of jiu-jitsu, been doing it for a long time. Leandro Lo is considered by many to be the best to ever do it, and he was murdered in Brazil last night. Long story short, but as a gentleman who came to their table, they're at a party or a club, and started trying to fight his friends. He took the guy down to the ground, held him on the ground, told him to calm down. The guy said, "All right, I'm calm down." Let the guy up. The guy got up and pulled a gun and shot him in the head. And turns out it was an undercover police officer, not undercover, but it was an off-duty police officer. So like my condolences to Leandro Lo, and like to put in perspective, this would be like in basketball, like Michael Jordan dying or getting shot in the head. But well, the reason why I bring that up is because especially with a lot of young men in when I say young man, I don't mean me, Jason, or I don't know how old you are, Bo, but probably not you either. I'm talking like early 20s. There's a lot of bravado and a lot of ego that goes around in those circles. And it's better than having an ego. It's being alive. And the reason I say that is because my dad advice for this week is like, just don't start altercations. And sometimes maybe you got to like look like a wuss in front of your friends, but it's always better to back away and then wake up the next morning than it is to get involved in an altercation or a situation, in which case someone could get hurt or go to the hospital or go to jail, or in this place, go to the morgue.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice is, like, if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone's puffing their chest out at you, trying to fight you, trying to think, you know what, be the bigger man and just step down, or be the bigger person, I should say. I shouldn't say man, be the bigger person and walk away, step away from it. Because what'll happen is the next day, everyone gets to wake up at their own beds, and that person's going to have their friends telling them how big of a dickbag they were. But everyone got to wake up in their own beds the next day. So sometimes it's just better to step away. And I don't mean this guy couldn't anything differently, because it sounded like he was trying to stop this person from hurting his friends. So I get it, things happen. But here's a guy who's been training his whole life for self-defense and still is no match for a gun. Let's be honest. So yeah, not to bring it down, but just that's kind of want to talk about is this ego and how, like, I think the older you get, the less you have an ego, the more you just don't care anymore. And I mean it in the best way possible. And that, like, someone could walk up in the streets and call me a name and I just wouldn't care. Like, just move on with your life. Like, that's just doesn't bother me at all. Like, we're adults at this point, and physical violence is not the way to solve our issues.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is going to be a very teachery response, but something that I have, teaching students who are at I taught 5th grade for the last 3 years, and it's kind of the age where they start to get into physical scraps.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with students, and it's always my male students, and I don't cast any kind of generalizations on gender. It's just the way that it's happened with me. Is, well, I have to defend myself, Miss Gray. I have to defend myself. And I'm like, I know that, but sometimes the best way to defend yourself is to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a school setting with kids, it's, I hate that this is what happens, but even when you're defending yourself, both parties are going to get in trouble. And, that's what the people around you are there for, is to be a witness and to help. And so I always tell my students, like, I'm here for a reason. I'm not just here to teach you how to read. I'm here to help. So if someone's trying to put their hands on you, you come tell me, because I'm going to take care of it. You don't need to take care of it. That's my job.
Yeah, definitely. Bo, sorry.
Yeah, I think all of that is totally right. I will gender shame and say that I think a lot of it is tied up in sort of traditional gender roles and the machismo that goes along with that. And you have so many fathers, I mean, of our generation, I would think, for the grandpas who are having this conversation. But there was a very real, like, here is how you behave to be a man. And I think that is changing somewhat, but there's still a lot of that. And especially, as Allison was saying, that these kids who are starting to get those first jolts of hormones and starting to have all these kind of aggressive and feelings that they don't really know what to do with, and a lot of times that comes out as aggression, and it depends on how they're rewarded for that. Like if their parents or the culture that they are steeped in, whether that's school culture, it's the group of friends they're with or whatever, if they are encouraged to be aggressive, and that is the kind of positive reinforcement that's going to lead to people getting into fights, when, like, schoolyard fights when you're 12 years old is one thing. Starting fights at bars when you're in your mid-20s means that things have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a real shame, but to your point, it is one of the benefits of getting older, is that you just no longer have anything to prove. And a lot of it comes down to that, like, insecurity that a lot of young men feel of society, parents, whoever it is, have placed certain expectations on male success to one degree or another. And if you're not meeting that, it can create a lot of frustration and create a lot of violence. And I'm a big believer that violence is always born of frustration, insecurity, that kind of thing. It's very few people are, like we were talking, the Dahmer, well, not even Dahmer, that's a bad example, because he was such a broken person. But I mean, there are very few people who just have that genetic switch that makes them naturally violent. That is the kind of thing that's ultimately taught. And I think culturally, I think we are getting better with that kind of thing. Obviously not in the case that you're describing, Mondo, and that's I was reading about that as well. It's a terrible tragedy.
Yeah,
but hopefully it's a teachable moment for somebody somewhere, that maybe you can prevent this happening in the future by pointing to this. And like you said, just go home, wake up, everybody wake up in their beds the next day, and realize, like, I always go back to this World War II vet that was like the last living member of his unit. And when he was interviewed and they asked him about his time in the war, his response was, "War is stupid." Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel about most violence in general. It just comes from such a dark, bad place of complete misunderstanding and a lack of empathy, and
no one benefits.
Yeah, and everybody loses. Yeah,
no one wins. And I've seen, like, there's a great video of Matt Serra, famous UFC champion, great famous BJJ black belt, when, like, he got into an altercation at a restaurant with a guy who was trying to fight. He tried to punch a waiter, so Matt Serra took him down, just sat on top of him. The cops come, didn't throw a single punch, just held him there until the cops came. And but you also understand, like, this is kind of the same situation, but this time met the guy up and the guy shot him. So the best policy is always just walk away from situations. And if you have friends or a lover that's gonna, let's say if you're a male, it's gonna emasculate you because of that, they're probably not the right friends or the right lover that you should be keeping around, because people that really get this are going to understand that, like, it's kind of when I see those videos where you see someone about to sort of fight and everyone's around their friends are videotaping them and egging them on. Those aren't good friends. The good friend is the guy who's going to put the phone down and try to walk in between the two people and to stop it from happening, because violence can always be an answer, but it should never be the answer. It's just
it's just
bad
not
for
the right
everybody.
answer.
It's never the right answer. Like, and this is not to say, you know, people who've gotten mugged and fought back and stuff, I get it. It happens. But ideally, in an ideal world, the first part would never happen to instigate the second part, if that makes sense.
Like, I guess I'm gonna get on my like feminism high horse.
It's all good. It's all good.
But you know, like I as a woman, I can't relate to the pressures of that like toxic masculinity. But it's like this is the effect of misogyny on
100%.
men. It's like it's the we teach our children. Boys are not taught to process emotions in a healthy way. I mean, neither are girls either, but especially our boys are taught, don't cry. You have to be brave. You have to be tough. You have to stand up for what's right. You have to punch your feelings away. And this is what happens because of that. You get grown men who can't process their emotions. And instead of finding healthy outlets or going to fucking therapy, they kill people in public or beat their wives.
I mean, I do jujitsu, so I just choke people, but it's all mutual. It's fine.
See, consensual choking is always the answer. You heard it here first.
Well, I mean, and to tie it to like more of the dad advice section, you know, I have a son who, you know, is on the autism spectrum, who's not very good at expressing himself a lot of the time. He gets frustrated. He can get frustrated very easily. So a lot of times, instead of getting mad that he's not doing something, I try to pivot to what is upsetting you or what about that thing is making you mad, and not being mad at him for being mad, disobeying, but trying to get to a root cause of the behavior.
Well, it's awesome.
Yeah.
What I love there, Jason, is you're having a conversation with them and telling them it's okay to have these feelings. Let's figure it out, and not saying suck it up. Which I guarantee you, like, you know, I'm just guessing that me, Bo, and Jason are on the same age, where when we were young, we were all told just to suck it up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And then so you do that, and you take all these things, you put them inside you in places they shouldn't go, and you never really learn healthy, positive ways to talk about them or get out them. So I really love the fact that you're doing that, dude. That's awesome.
And the caveat to that is that's not easy to do.
It's not.
There comes a lot of frustration, and it takes a lot of growth on my part to get to be able to do that. So I'm not saying, oh, I'm a great parent who just always, you know, can stop in any situation and be there and be in that caring way. No, it's a journey.
But don't sell yourself short, because you're willing to put that work in, man, which is not easy. So that's pretty badass.
Trust me, I have seen parents who are not willing to put that work in.
Yeah. Oh God, I can't even imagine being a teacher.
I had a kid my first year teaching who would growl at me and like kick kids and like throw shit at me. And his mom was just, it was my fault, clearly. And her child never did anything wrong in his life. And where did I get my degree? Out of a candy machine? Despite, you know, and it was so sad to see, because like this was a second grader. And you just sit there and you know that this child is going to have such a difficult life in the future because his mom is not teaching him how to process anger and frustration.
Not to change the mood now, like now I envision a degree vending machine outside of like a Kroger or a Smith's or an Albertsons, where you have to put in $40,000 and you get like a degree.
If I could get a degree out of a candy machine, I would have a magical degree where I would get paid to read books and not interact with people at all.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
All right. I think that wraps up this episode, unless anyone has anything profound they want to add.
No. I just want to say, just like,
good talk, guys.
Be a good person, and things will be cool.
It always comes down to kindness. So just like be as kind as you can to everyone you can, and that you hope, you know, bears fruit.
There's a great video you can find on YouTube. It's a David Foster Wallace, and it's a commencement speech I think he did for Stanford or Harvard. It's called "What Is Water."
Okay, I've seen that.
And if you haven't seen it, I urge everyone to watch this video because a kid, I'm not joking when I say the first time I saw this, a mentor of mine over for Apple showed this to me one time, probably back in like 2015, 16 or whatever. Maybe younger, maybe farther back than that, and it changed my whole way of thinking. Because the whole idea behind it is like, yeah, you go to a grocery store and you see that person at the front arguing with the cashier over $5, but maybe that $5 is the extra $5 they need to pay for their son's insulin or something like that. You never know the struggle someone else is going through, and why ever. And as humans, we shouldn't think we do. And if we just, whenever something bad is happening around us, or we think, oh, that person's a dick, and we just think, man, we don't know their struggle, and we decide that we're just not going to get involved with it, or we're going to be better, and we're just not going to further add that negativity. That's just the best way we can act as human beings.
Kindness is a drop in the water, and each moment, each opportunity that you take to do something for someone else ripples out.
Yeah.
And Jason, I have some, like, later I can tell you, I've got some excellent picture books that would be awesome to read with your kids that are about the effects of kindness.
Yeah, there's the bucket one. Is that what you're talking about?
No, there's one called The Invisible Boy, which
Okay.
I use even in teaching upper grades to teach about like theme. There's one called I Walk with Vanessa that is a wordless picture book, which is really excellent. And then there's a kind of a bummer one called Each Kindness that shows the effects on a little girl of like she was unkind to someone and didn't get the opportunity to make it better. And so it's one of those really cool stories to where like it opens up a conversation with kids about like not every story has a happy ending, but how can this character take what she learned from being unkind and be kind in the future?
Yeah, we recently got a book called about being what's called bucket fillers. Basically, it posits that every person has a bucket. And when you're kind or nice to someone, you're helping fill their bucket. When you're mean to someone, you're taking out of their bucket. If you're a bully, you're taking water from their bucket. So it's about filling everyone's bucket all day.
So to wrap it all up, as I think Bill and Ted once said, be excellent to each other.
For sure.
Good. Okay, that wraps up another episode. Alyssa and Bo, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you?
Thank you guys.
You first.
Oh, okay. You can find me on the Dark Parade. Like I said, just do a search on any of your podcast catchers. You can also find the shows that I do along with several other shows over at legionpodcasts.com. Where you can find a bunch more horror podcasts and all that kind of thing. So, shout out to all those fine folks. And if you go to that website and find the Dark Parade there, you can find a link to the Discord. I don't mess with much other social stuff at this point. It bums me out.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
Fair
Dude.
enough.
I don't blame you.
All right, Alyssa.
I am on Twitter at No Hungry Ghosts. And I also run the book club for the Bloody Good Horror podcast. We are at BGH Book Club and also on Reddit, r/BGH Book Club. I'm really bad about updating it. But this month we're reading a book called Hide, and it is about a contest to hide in an abandoned amusement park and win like $1 million or something.
And do you have an ETA for when we can hear the silver screen?
When I get my shit together.
Your shit together.
When I learn how to podcast.
When we have a release date for that, we'll let all our listeners know.
The goal is before the end of the calendar year, but I'm about to start. The school year is about to start, and I'm in grad school, so who knows?
You're a little busy. It's okay.
Just a little bit.
All right. Well, next week we will be reviewing Curiosity Killed. We appreciate everyone for listening. We really appreciate it if you would give us a rating review on iTunes and a rating on Spotify. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Adios to everyone but the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Glenn
There it
Jacobs. Fuck you, Glenn Jacobs.
All right. Stop.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.